Hi guys, Janet here. You're probably surprised to see me in front of the camera rather than behind the camera, but I have been reading a lot, and I've discovered BookTube. In between doing my last crafting video and this video right here, I have discovered BookTube, and I'm in love with BookTube. So I'm going to do my first book tag today and my first BookTube video. I will still be doing crafting videos. I will still be doing book videos of like little books that I make, and I will be doing some book related crafts because I have some ideas for some stuff I want to do, and that's nothing new. I've always been inspired by the books that I read, and it's kind of informed some of the crafting stuff that I do. So I've got some ideas for some stuff that'll be coming up in the next few months. So I hope that if you're a crafter that you'll stick around, and if you're a booktuber that you'll stick around. But you know, you have to make your choice as to whether or not you want to watch a channel that has more than just booktube or more than just crafts. And I debated whether or not to separate my channels and have a crafting one and a book one, and decided that since I'm having enough trouble just doing a crafting one, that if I tried to add another channel I would not get anything loaded up on either channel. So anyway, so here we go. This is the 20th century book tag that Words of a Reader started, and I'm going to be pulling books out of my shelf, hopefully, that fit the bill. Also, just so you know, I am not techno savvy and I don't know how to edit videos yet. I'm going to, but not yet. And so it's going to be probably just like a one take shot. And hopefully as I do this more, become more comfortable with the software and stuff, I'll learn how to do that. So there's things like sneezing and coughing. I'm sorry, I can't cut that out. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to get from my stash is this McGuffey's Eclectic Spelling Book. This book was originally published in 1879, but this revision of it was published in 1907. And you can see it's extremely old, very distressed, and that's the reason that I bought it. And I intend to actually do some crafting with this. So if you're a booktuber and appalled at the thought of somebody destroying a book, I'm just warning you now that I have no problem with doing that. And in fact, I have another project that I'm working on that I destroyed a copy of a book. So this eventually is going to probably be a journal. I'm probably going to take the cover off and use the cover for a journal, and the pages inside, which is like spelling and stuff, I'll use either in collage or use it to make paper flowers or something with. So that's my first book. That one is 1907. The next book that I have is not actually a physical copy. It's on my Kindle, and the reason I don't have a copy of it is because I read this book when I was in grade school. It's Daddy Longlegs. My school library had a copy of this book. This book was written in 1912 by Jean Webster, and some of you may have seen the movie with Fred Astaire and Leslie Caron, I believe it was, from the 50s. It's mainly just a showcase for the two of them dancing because they're both dancers. But it's a story of a young girl who is in an orphanage, and she is anonymously sponsored by someone off the orphanage board to go to college, and the only obligation on her part is that she has to write a monthly letter to her benefactor, which she does, and that's what the novel is about. You can see her growth throughout. And I looked the book up on Wikipedia because I wasn't sure what year this book was actually published. So it deals with some women's suffrage themes and women's issues, which I, as a child, did not recognize. I just thought it was interesting that she was going to college and that someone was paying for it. And I even liked the idea that she had to write letters because I loved doing that kind of thing when I was a kid. So This book um, also, according to Wikipedia, was they based a Japanese anime series on it in the 80s, which I didn't know. So, anyway, it's a pretty good book. It's in the public domain, so you can download it on Kindle for free, or it's on Google. That's where I read it recently before I got my Kindle. It's just on Google, and you can, I think it's actually like the original copy that they have scanned in, so that's kind of interesting. And there are some drawings in it, some line drawings in it. So that's from 1912. The next book is from the 20s. This one is The Twins Adventuring. This book, and that's by Dorothy Whitehill. When I was a kid, I read my grandmother's books and my mother's and my aunt's books because my grandma didn't throw anything away. And my grandma had some of the books from this series. Let's see. There's Janet a twin, Phyllis a twin. Anyway, here we go. The Twins series. I don't know if you can read that, but I read those as a kid and I loved them. This one was published in 1927. It's one of the later books in the series. I think the earlier ones were published in the teens, and I just really liked them, about two twin girls and their adventures at school, and then as they grow up and get married and have kids. So, and I bought this one recently at a used bookstore here in Portland, and the other books I found recently over at my parents'. We're currently cleaning their house out because my parents have moved, and so we're cleaning out the garage, and I found boxes of books out there which I will be bringing home, and I did find some of these books in there. I don't know if I actually have this one already, but I grab these when I see them just because I'd like to fill in the series. The next book that I have from the 30s is Mickey Mouse. This book was my mom's book, and unfortunately the page in here that gives the copyright date is torn out. But my aunt wrote her name in there, and it says Gwen and Merle, or maybe that's my grandma's writing, I don't know, 1935. So this is a 1935 probably version of Mickey Mouse. My mom, when she was a kid, was enamored with Mickey Mouse and refused to learn to tell time. So my grandpa bought her a Mickey Mouse watch, and from that time on, if she would learn to tell time, he would buy her Mickey Mouse watch. So we have a lot of Mickey Mouse memorabilia from the 30s, and this is one of them. And I think it's basically just like stills from the cartoons, and then there's some narrative down there. So this is pretty fun book. The next book, I actually have two from the 40s. This one again is a book that was my mom's or my aunt's, I'm not sure, and it's called Susan B. Smooth. This book makes me laugh because I was reading this book in the 60s, and it's a book written in the 40s about makeup and beauty, and here's all this like hippies and social upheaval and all this stuff going around me, and I'm like wanting to be like a little girl from the 40s, and definitely was a different time. But this book is very cool because it's like teaching young girls fashion and makeup, style. I love the illustrations in this. I love also the writing. See, that's the makeup one, make a face. It's got the font in here. It's like hand lettering. Oh, there's another one. She's washing her lingerie. So anyway, this is a really fun book, and obviously it was my mom and my aunt would have read this when they were young. Let's see, what year is this? 42. This book is from 42. So my aunt would have been a teenager, and my mom would have been about 12. So the next book I have is also from the 40s. This one I just recently bought. I got it at a used bookstore, and it's because I'm into crafting. This one is called Fun for Boys and Girls, and I had to laugh. Here's the front page of it. Fun for Boys and Girls, and it's by Cappy Dick. Cappy Dick is the name of the author. And it's just a book of crafts and games, things to entertain kids. Like Boy Scout troops or whatever. And it's got all these great illustrations and fabulous things that kids can do. And again, I had bought this book thinking I would alter it, like rip it up and use it for collage or whatever. But it's just too cool. I love the illustrations in it. I want to actually try some of the little games and crafting stuff that they have in here. And so I'm not gonna do anything with this one. But I did want to read what it says in here because I thought this was really interesting. In here on the inside cover, it says, "This is a wartime book. In accordance with the regulations of the War Production Board, the format of this book has been designed to save paper and other materials essential to the war effort. Although this volume may be smaller in bulk, have fewer pages, narrower margins, or other features not found in peacetime books, its contents are complete and unabridged in every respect." And I thought that was really interesting because, they were rationing everything back in the 40s, and even the books, they were using conservation methods on. So I thought that was interesting. The book I chose from the 50s is this book here, Gone Away Lake. This was a book that I actually bought in the 60s, but it's a Scholastic book, and I don't know how many of you guys remember these books. I think Scholastic is still around. I think it's still making books for kids, but when I was a kid, that was like my highlight of school, was getting the Scholastic newspaper thing, that order blank, where you would look at the books that were available and then you would place your order. What I didn't realize until years and years later, when I was adult, was that Scholastic was taking books that had been published in the 40s and 50s. This was in the 60s when I was going to school. They were taking books from the 40s and 50s and reprinting them and putting them up there. So again, here I was reading these books. Not only was I reading my mom's books and my grandma's books, but all the books that I was reading as a child were books that had been written 10, 15, 20 years before. So I grew up with a kind of skewed view of what the world really was like. The reason I picked this one, though, is because for me, Elizabeth Enright was one of my favorite authors when I was a kid. Also because the illustrations in this book are by Beth and Joe Crush. And if you have any books from the 60s, 50s, you will recognize their writings. They were infamous for doing these fabulous line drawings, and their drawings made me fall in love with the books. If there was any book that had Beth and Joe Crush drawings in it, I was bound and determined that I would buy it. I didn't even realize it was the same author. I just knew I liked these kind of drawings, and it was because they were so detailed, and almost inevitably the drawings would be about like Victorian houses and attics and things like that, and it was just absolutely, the drawings are just absolutely charming. I just absolutely love them. So if you ever can get a hold of a reprint of these books with the original drawings in it, they did drawings for Beverly Cleary, some of her books, a lot of these Elizabeth Enright books, just some other, a lot of other kids' books. So fabulous. And I have a ton of these Scholastic books because I just love them. So this represents actually the 50s, because this book was written in 57, I believe. Yeah. And then this book for the 60s, it's the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Thomas Wolfe. I don't know how many of you guys have read this book, but this is like total treatise on the 60s. And I read this, I think, in the 80s, just because I was getting a little nostalgic, I think, for the 60s. This book chronicles the shenanigans of Ken Kesey and his band of merry pranksters. And I've seen some recently. Some of you have put in your book hauls that you have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. Well, this book is about him, and he was the ultimate hippie. He was the guy that helped get the whole movement started. So, and he was an Oregon author too. So, which I have read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I have to admit that I have not read Sometimes a Great Notion. So, one of these days I will be reading that book. And anyway, I loved this book. I absolutely adored it because it told me things about the hippie movement that I didn't know. It was about, a native son here in Oregon, and it was just really interesting. It was interesting reading about that time period, and some of which I remembered, some of which I didn't. I certainly wasn't old enough to participate in the hippie movement, but I definitely was influenced by it. So I highly recommend this book. It's really good. 70s, I chose this book. This book is called Living on the Earth, and the author is Alicia Bay Laurel. She obviously changed her name, which was, how 70s is that? This book actually was just on the cusp of the 70s. It was, the first edition was 1970. This copy was from 71. And it's basically a book written by a girl that lived in a commune, and it's kind of like her diary or her journal, and it's got illustrations that she did, it's got recipes in it, it's got natural healing in it, it's got things like how to make pickles, how to make jam, how to raise chickens, how to make your own clothes. It's just really so very hippie-ish, and I just love it. And this one I did not have from the 70s, but this was the kind of book that I would have read in the 70s. Yes, I was really interested in communes in the 70s, but by the time I graduated from high school, it was already the disco era, and hippies had kind of passed, even though here in Oregon we still do have communes. I work with some people that live in communal housing, so it's still alive. But yeah, anyway, I love this book and highly recommend this one too. 80s, I kind of cheated on this one too. I've got two for the 80s. This book here, for those of you that remember, the Preppy Handbook. This book was a huge hit in the 80s, and I think the reason that preppydom came into being was because it was like a rebellion against hippie parents, for kids who had grown up with parents that were hippies. They went the opposite direction and became preps, and I had to laugh because there's an article in here. This book came out in 1980, so it was just on the cusp, but it's something about how to be a real life Holden Caulfield, which if you like Catcher in the Rye, you can, real life Holden Caulfield. So very preppy, and it's all about how you can model yourself after East Coast preps, which I have to tell you that along with being totally enamored with hippie culture, I also was enamored with the other side of it too. I bought this book in 1980 for $3.95, and then Lisa Birnbach, the author or editor, she came to Portland at Willamette University, and I took the book up there. I had written my name here on the side, and it's in calligraphy, and she was like, "Did you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, calligraphy, it's so preppy." I was like, "Oh," and she wrote here, "Dear Janet, calligraphy is such a good way to earn a living until you get married." And then it says, "Best, Lisa Birnbach." So I just had to laugh. So I've got good memories of reading this book, and not that I ever became preppy, but I was really interested in that. This book, though, is the one really that I think epitomizes the 80s. It's called Slaves of New York by Tama Janowitz. This book was written in 86, and if you've seen the movie, you know pretty much what the book is about. It's this was totally about 80s pop culture. And there's even on the back here a quote from Andy Warhol saying, "Great, sizzling, wow." And what it says here, let's see, Newsday said that this book is Jane Austen Goes Punk. Welcome to Bohemia, circa now. And on the back it says, meet the slaves of New York. Eleanor, who designs James Bond doll earrings. Her boyfriend Stash, a chic graffiti artist. Fred, an unemployed musician who takes strange women shopping at Tiffany's. And Bob the pimp with a penchant for Kant. So that's like an Immanuel Kant. So anyway, it's, if you want to read a treatise of the 80s and read about fashion and bohemian lifestyle in the 80s, this is your book. It's funny and just really, I like this book. It's the epitome of the 80s. Then in the 90s, I didn't really read a lot of books in the 90s. It was like work and just other stuff. So the book I chose was Creative Bead Weaving because, again, I'm into crafts, and in the 90s I was doing a lot of crafting. I was also on the computer a lot because the computer was new, and but this represents what the kind of stuff that I was doing in the 90s. I have shelves of craft books from the 90s, and it's you know, your basic craft book about how to do beadwork, which is another thing that I do. So anyway, that kind of wraps up my walk through the last century, and thanks for watching, and I hope to be doing more crafting videos and more booktube videos. Bye!